Welcome to our channel. Today we drift into the fascinating world of Long Island's Gold Coast mansions, exploring the grandeur, lifestyle, and secrets of these iconic estates. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos that bring history to life, uncover hidden stories, and take you on journeys through time. The story of Long Island's Gold Coast is one of ambition, wealth, and a relentless pursuit of status. A story that begins in the late 19th century when America was reshaping itself after the Civil War, transforming from a primarily agrarian society into an industrial and financial powerhouse. The Gold Coast was not just a region, it was a symbol of aspiration, a stage on which the new American elite could display their fortunes and social standing with unparalleled opulence. Nestled along the northern shores of Long Island, stretching from the waters of the Long Island Sound to the rolling hills inland, this area became home to families whose names have become synonymous with wealth, influence, and cultural impact. Vanderbilt, Whitney, Phipps, and Gould, the industrial titans and financiers of their day, chose the Gold Coast as a retreat, a place where they could escape the bustling streets of Manhattan and build sprawling estates that rivaled the palaces of Europe. Driving along the tree-lined avenues that cut through this stretch of Long Island, one can almost imagine the sense of awe that must have greeted visitors a century ago. The approach to each estate was deliberate, designed to impress even before the gates swung open. Wrought iron fences, intricately forged from steel and ironwork imported from Europe, marked the boundaries of private kingdoms. Massive gates, often adorned with family crests, stood as sentinels to the worlds inside, hinting at the scale of the luxury within. The lawns that stretched out from the gates to the front doors were manicured with obsessive precision, reflecting a desire not just for beauty, but for control over nature itself. Every shrub, every flower bed, and every tree was placed with an almost architectural sensibility, creating vistas that could be admired from windows or terraces as the owners and their guests strolled through the grounds. As one crossed the threshold into these estates, the sense of scale became staggering. Unlike the modest homes of the middle class, or even the comfortable residences of the upper middle class, these mansions were vast in both physical size and symbolic meaning. Ceilings soared to heights that seemed almost impossible, adorned with plasterwork so intricate it resembled lace frozen in time. Chandeliers, often imported from France or Bohemia, hung like glittering constellations, scattering light across rooms lined with gilded paneling and imported wood. The floors beneath them were polished marble or richly varnished hardwood, reflecting not just the physical light, but the wealth of those who walked upon them. Walls were decorated with tapestries and oil paintings, many depicting scenes from classical mythology or European aristocracy, emphasizing the cosmopolitan education and tastes of the homeowners. Each room had a purpose, carefully thought out, to impress, entertain, and provide comfort. Music rooms, designed with perfect acoustics, echoed with the melodies of pianists or visiting orchestras. Libraries were more than collections of books. They were statements of intellect and refinement, often containing rare manuscripts, first editions, and towering shelves that required ladders to reach their uppermost volumes. Billiard rooms, card rooms, and private studies reflected the leisure pursuits of the era, while drawing rooms and salons were designed for conversation, courtship, and observation spaces where the social rituals of the elite unfolded in a carefully choreographed dance. The ballrooms were perhaps the crown jewels of these mansions, vast open spaces where chandeliers glittered above polished floors, where families could host hundreds of guests for lavish soirees, charity balls, and social gatherings that cemented their position within elite society. The Gold Coast estates were also deeply intertwined with the natural environment, creating a delicate interplay between architecture and landscape. Many of the grand homes were positioned to capture breathtaking views of the Long Island Sound, its waters shimmering in the sunlight, reflecting the grandeur of the estates themselves. Large windows, often spanning entire walls, not only allowed the owners to admire their surroundings, but also demonstrated the wealth required to build homes that embraced openness and light rather than the enclosed, defensive designs of earlier architectural periods. Gardens and grounds extended the luxury outdoors with meticulously curated floral displays, fountains, statues, and labyrinthine pathways that invited leisurely exploration. These landscapes were designed by some of the most prominent landscape architects of the time, ensuring that every vista, every flowerbed, and every hedge contributed to the overall narrative of wealth, taste, and control. Yet, despite the grandeur and careful planning, life on the Gold Coast was not without its complexities. The very scale of these homes required immense labor to maintain, and with that came a rigid social hierarchy. The families who lived in these palatial homes relied on large staffs, sometimes numbering in the dozens, composed of butlers, maids, cooks, groundskeepers, chauffeurs, and other servants who worked behind the scenes to ensure that every aspect of daily life appeared effortless. These workers lived largely hidden from view, in quarters that were modest in comparison to the sprawling luxury above. Their lives were dictated by the schedules and demands of the families they served, attending to both the mundane tasks of housekeeping and the elaborate preparation required for parties, dinners, and social events. The contrast between the dazzling lives of the estate owners and the labor-intensive existence of their staff underscores the complexity of life on the Gold Coast, a world of privilege and power built on the unseen work of others. The social rituals of the Gold Coast further defined the lives of those who lived there. Every season brought with it a series of events, each designed to solidify the family's social position and demonstrate their wealth and taste. Summer garden parties, autumn hunting expeditions, winter balls, and spring social calls were all orchestrated with precision, each event reflecting not only the wealth of the host, but also their understanding of social nuance. Invitations were carefully curated, guest lists managed with strict attention to relationships and status, and the success of an event could influence alliances, marriages, and business partnerships. In a world where appearances mattered as much as substance, every gesture, every detail of decor, and every display of hospitality was laden with significance. The Gold Coast era also coincided with a period of immense cultural change in America. The nation was experiencing the rise of industrial magnates whose fortunes rivaled the royal families of Europe, And these newly wealthy Americans sought to establish themselves as cultured, sophisticated, and influential. The estates they built on Long Island were not merely homes, they were symbols of achievement, expressions of taste, and declarations of social authority. By emulating European aristocratic traditions in architecture, interior design, and lifestyle, these families positioned themselves as part of an elite cultural narrative, one that merged American innovation with Old World refinement. At the same time, the Gold Coast was a site of contrasts. The immense wealth and luxury coexisted with broader social inequalities, reflecting the disparities of the Gilded Age. While the estate owners enjoyed unparalleled comfort and leisure, the laborers who maintained these homes worked long hours for modest wages. Their lives, though integral to the functioning of these estates, were largely invisibly silent testament to the human cost of luxury. This duality, glamour and hardship, display and labor, defines much of the fascination with the Gold Coast, and offers insight into the broader dynamics of wealth, power, and social stratification in early 20th century America. Walking through the Gold Coast today, visitors can still sense the awe and ambition that characterized this era. Many mansions have been preserved as museums or historical sites, allowing us to step back in time and experience, if only partially, the lifestyle of America's elite. The grandeur of the architecture, the meticulousness of the gardens, and the richness of the interiors all serve as reminders of a period when wealth was both a tool of social positioning and a canvas for artistic and architectural expression. Each home tells a story, not just of the families who lived there, but of an era defined by ambition, display, and the complex interplay between public image and private life. In the end, the story of Long Island's Gold Coast is a story of dreams made tangible through architecture, landscape, and lifestyle. It is a story of people striving to assert their place in a rapidly changing world, of families seeking to combine comfort, culture, and prestige in a single spectacular setting. It is a story that invites us to look beyond the glittering surfaces, to consider the lives lived both in the spotlight and behind the scenes, and to understand how wealth, taste, and social aspiration shaped one of the most fascinating regions of American history. To walk the grounds of a Gold Coast estate is to step into a world of wonder, complexity, and ambition, a world where every detail, from the gates to the chandeliers, tells a story about who these people were, what they valued, and how they wished to be remembered. The grandeur of Long Island's Gold Coast mansions was not just a product of wealth, but The grandeur of Long Island's Gold Coast mansions was not just a product of wealth, but a deliberate expression of taste, ambition, and social standing, a testament to the vision and resources of the families who built them. Walking through one of these estates, one could immediately sense that every element, from the sweeping staircase at the entrance to the delicate carvings on a mantelpiece, was designed to impress and assert dominance. The architecture itself was a blend of European influence and American innovation, reflecting the cosmopolitan aspirations of the industrial and financial elite. French Renaissance, Tudor Revival, Georgian, and Mediterranean styles were common, each chosen to communicate elegance, sophistication, and a deep connection to the traditions of the Old World. These homes were not merely functional, they were monuments, carefully crafted to project wealth and refinement. Upon approaching a mansion, the exterior alone often provided a glimpse into the luxury that awaited inside. Massive stone facades, intricately carved columns, and expansive porticos created a sense of permanence and majesty. Roof lines were often complex, with dormer windows, turrets, and chimneys designed not just for practicality, but as decorative elements, contributing to the visual drama of the estate. Windows were often tall and numerous, allowing natural light to flood into vast interior spaces, while balconies and terraces offered sweeping views of manicured gardens, fountains, and the distant Long Island Sound. Each facade was a statement, a carefully composed scene meant to impress guests before they had even stepped inside. The entrance halls of these mansions set the tone for the entire interior. Visitors were greeted by ceilings that soared high above, often elaborately plastered or frescoed with intricate designs. The floors were polished to a mirror-like finish, made from rare woods, marble, or intricately inlaid patterns that demonstrated both craftsmanship and taste. Grand staircases, often curving in elegant arcs, served as central features, adorned with carved balustrades, gilded handrails, and red or green velvet runners. These staircases were not merely functional, they were symbolic pathways guiding visitors through the stages of the house while showcasing the wealth and power of the owners. Chandeliers hung like frozen constellations from the ceilings, their crystals catching and scattering sunlight or lamplight across the halls, creating a luminous spectacle that emphasized opulence and grandeur inside. Every room of a Gold Coast mansion was carefully curated to serve a purpose, to create an atmosphere, and to reflect the status and sophistication of the inhabitants. The drawing rooms and salons were designed for conversation and display, filled with plush seating, delicate rugs imported from Persia or Europe, and finely crafted tables, cabinets, and consoles. Walls were often lined with artworks, both paintings and sculptures showcasing a family's cultural literacy and aesthetic sensibilities. European pieces, whether furniture, tapestries, or decorative objects, were especially prized, signaling not just wealth, but taste aligned with aristocratic traditions. Abroad, mirrors, gilded frames, and candelabras were strategically placed to reflect light and space, creating an illusion of even greater grandeur and depth. Music rooms were particularly important in many estates, reflecting the cultural priorities of the elite. A piano, often a Steinway or other European model, dominated the space, accompanied by string instruments or even harps and accordions. In some homes, acoustics were carefully considered, with high ceilings and wood paneling designed to enhance sound quality. It was common for private recitals or performances to be held in these rooms, where trained musicians or even family members entertained guests. Music, as much as architecture, became a marker of social position, reinforcing the narrative of refinement and cultivated taste that the mansion itself embodied. Libraries, another key feature, were designed to convey intellectual authority and worldliness. Shelves stretched to the ceiling, accessible by sliding ladders, filled with leather-bound volumes, rare manuscripts, and first editions. The decor often combined dark woods, ornate leather chairs, and heavy draperies, creating an atmosphere both grand and intimate a place where one could retreat from social obligations into contemplation, study, or quiet conversation. These libraries were as much a stage as a sanctuary. Guests were meant to see the intellectual wealth of the family alongside their material wealth, creating a holistic image of superiority that combined culture, education, and financial power. Dining rooms in the Gold Coast mansions were spaces of both luxury and ceremony. Long tables, often made from rare woods and inlaid with intricate patterns, were surrounded by hubbacked chairs upholstered in velvet or brocade, china, crystal, and silverware of Frun imported from Europe were meticulously arranged, with each place setting signaling attention to detail and status. Elaborate sideboards, buffets, and cabinetry displayed serving dishes, candelabras, and decorative objects, ensuring that even when not in use, the room itself projected opulence. Dinner parties were events in themselves, requiring careful planning of seating arrangements, courses, and conversation, as these gatherings were as much about networking and social positioning as they were about nourishment. They became central to the social fabric of the elite. Ballrooms were perhaps the crowning achievement of many estates' vast open spaces designed to host hundreds of guests. The floors were highly polished to allow for dancing, the ceilings intricately decorated with plaster reliefs or painted murals, and the walls often adorned with mirrors, sconces, or tapestries. Chandeliers dominated the ceiling, often weighing hundreds of pounds, their crystals catching the light in a dazzling display. Hosting a ball was not merely entertainment. It was a social imperative, an opportunity to solidify one's place among the elite, impress peers, and even influence business and political alliances. Every detail, from the musicians selected to the flowers arranged on tables, was a calculated reflection of taste and power. Bedrooms, though private, were no less lavish. Canopy beds, often imported or custom-made, were draped with heavy fabrics and fine linens. Dressers, armchairs, and vanity tables were carved with intricate details, reflecting both craftsmanship and wealth. Bedrooms often included private sitting areas, fireplaces, and expansive windows overlooking gardens or the Sound. These spaces combined comfort with display, ensuring that even the most personal areas of the house communicated luxury. Bathrooms, too, were transformed into private sanctuaries with marble floors, ornate sinks, and clawfoot tubs, a level of extravagance rare for the time, highlighting the technological and material resources available to the wealthy. Servant quarters, while less grand, were integral to the functionality of these estates. Hidden staircases, separate hallways, and dedicated kitchens allowed staff to perform their duties without disrupting the grandeur of the main rooms. Kitchens themselves were technologically advanced for the period, with multiple ovens, ice boxes, and storage areas that allowed for elaborate meals and constant entertaining. Staff lived in modest quarters, yet their presence was essential to maintain the appearance of effortless luxury that defined the Gold Coast lifestyle. The attention to detail and decoration extended to smaller touches as well. Draperies were often lined and tied back with tasseled cords. Rugs were strategically placed to define spaces. Artwork and sculptures were positioned to draw the eye and impress visitors. Even the arrangement of furniture was deliberate, balancing function with aesthetics, creating visual harmony while facilitating social interaction. Every element, no matter how small, contributed to a narrative of sophistication, power, and unassailable taste. The architectural and interior design of the Gold Coast mansions was also a reflection of technological advances. Heating systems, plumbing, and electricity were incorporated in ways that allowed comfort without visible intrusion. Many homes boasted elevators, early intercom systems, and advanced lighting designs that made life easier while maintaining the aesthetic integrity of the rooms. These innovations were not just practical, they were symbols of modernity and progress, a testament to the owner's ability to harness both wealth and technology to create a superior living experience. Social rituals were inseparable from the architecture. Rooms were designed to facilitate specific types of interaction. Music rooms for performance and conversation, parlors for receiving visitors, libraries for study and intimate discussion, ballrooms for grand gatherings. The layout of the house guided guests through a carefully orchestrated experience, ensuring that each impression reinforced the family's image of sophistication and authority. Every entrance, hallway, and staircase was part of a choreography of social presentation, emphasizing status while controlling the flow of movement and attention. Gardens and terraces often served as extensions of the interior spaces, blending nature with design to create an integrated aesthetic experience. Fountains, sculptures, flower beds, and manicured lawns were carefully curated to provide views that could be enjoyed from multiple rooms. Outdoor spaces were often the sites of leisure and entertainment, from croquet matches to formal garden parties, further reinforcing the connection between grandeur and lifestyle. The integration of indoor and outdoor spaces demonstrated both aesthetic vision and practical understanding of how luxury could be experienced in every aspect of life. Outdoor spaces were often the sites of leisure and entertainment, from croquet matches to formal garden parties, further reinforcing the connection between architectural grandeur and lifestyle. The integration of indoor and outdoor spaces demonstrated both aesthetic vision and practical understanding of how luxury could be experienced in every aspect of life. Every element of these estates, from architecture to interior design, from furnishings to technological innovation, reflected a broader narrative about wealth, power, and identity. The mansions were not merely homes, they were instruments of social influence, demonstrating cultural literacy, technological prowess, and artistic sensibility. Each estate was unique, yet shared common themes: grandeur, attention to detail, sophistication, and a seamless blend of beauty and function. Walking through a Gold Coast mansion, one could read the story of its inhabitants in the choice of materials, the arrangement of spaces, and the display of objects, narrative crafted to impress, inspire, and command respect. The vast estates of Long Island's Gold Coast were more than simply grand homes. They were complete worlds unto themselves, meticulously designed to blend architecture, landscape, and leisure into a harmonious expression of wealth and status. While the interiors of these mansions displayed the owner's refinement and taste, the grounds and gardens were equally significant, serving as both a stage for social display and a private sanctuary for relaxation. The very layout of an estate reflected careful planning, with attention to views, circulation, and experience turning the natural landscape into a canvas for art, recreation, and social ritual. Walking through the grounds of a Gold Coast mansion, one could immediately appreciate the interplay between order and beauty. Expansive lawns stretched like emerald carpets, trimmed to perfection, and often punctuated by ornamental trees arranged to guide the eye toward key focal points: a fountain here, a statue there, or a distant vista of the Long Island Sound. These lawns were not merely decorative. They were multifunctional spaces hosting lawn parties, croquet games, and elegant outdoor receptions. Each event carefully choreographed to impress visitors while providing leisurely enjoyment for the family. Pathways of crushed stone or brick led through groves of trees, around flower beds, and towards secluded garden nooks, creating a sense of discovery and a controlled interaction with the landscape. Each turn of the path, each carefully placed plant or fountain, was designed to surprise and delight, demonstrating not just wealth, but taste and sophistication. The gardens themselves were masterpieces of design, often created by the era's most renowned landscape architects. Parter's formal geometric gardens with carefully clipped hedges and symmetrical flower arrangements reflected European influences, particularly the grand chateaux of France and the stately homes of England. Ornamental fountains served as both visual and auditory focal points, their trickling waters adding a sense of calm and serenity, while marble or bronze statues provided cultural and aesthetic weight, representing mythological figures, famous historical personalities, or abstract artistic expressions. Color was orchestrated with the same precision as form, with seasonal plantings ensuring that each estate displayed a constantly evolving tapestry of blooms, from tulips and daffodils in the spring to roses and chrysanthemums in summer and autumn. The careful layering of flowers, shrubs, and trees created depth and texture, offering different perspectives from each vantage point, whether viewed from a window, terrace, or garden path. In addition to the ornamental gardens, many estates incorporated functional outdoor features that supported the recreational lifestyles of their owners. Tennis courts, croquet lawns, and bowling greens became integral parts of the grounds, reflecting the popular leisure activities of the upper class. Polo fields and riding arenas were common on larger estates, particularly those owned by families with a strong equestrian tradition. Stables were often grand structures in themselves, housing thoroughbred horses and outfitted with the latest technology and amenities for the animals. Carriages and later automobiles were stored in separate carriage houses or garages, which were often as elegantly designed as the main house, emphasizing that even utility structures could reflect taste and status. Water features were particularly significant in the Gold Coast landscape. Many estates were situated to take advantage of natural bodies of water, whether rivers, ponds, or the Long Island Sound itself. Boathouses and docks allowed families to enjoy boating, sailing, and fishing, providing both leisure and a symbol of freedom and mobility. Artificial ponds and reflecting pools added aesthetic interest, often positioned to mirror the mansion itself or to create tranquil settings for private contemplation. These water elements also served practical purposes, providing irrigation for gardens and sometimes acting as natural cooling systems during the heat of summer. Seasonal variation played a central role in the design and use of the grounds. In spring, estates came alive with the explosion of color from flowering trees and bulbs, signaling the start of outdoor social activities. Summer was dominated by elaborate garden parties, croquet matches, and casual gatherings on terraces, often accompanied by orchestras or musicians. Autumn brought the splendor of foliage, with families hosting hunts, regattas, or private picnics amidst the changing leaves. Winter, though quieter, was not neglected as terraces and outdoor spaces were often decorated with lights, sculptures, and ice sculptures for festive events. The rhythm of the seasons dictated the flow of life on the estate, with leisure, socialization, and display perfectly aligned with nature's cycles. Entertainment on the grounds went far beyond passive observation. Families often engaged in structured recreational activities that reflected both their wealth and social standing. Croquet matches, for instance, were more than simple games. They were highly social events, occasions for conversation, flirtation, and subtle competition among guests. Polo and horseback riding demonstrated skill, status, and physical elegance, with private instructors and well-trained horses, ensuring a flawless performance. Boating and sailing were leisurely pursuits, but also carried symbolic weight, signifying freedom, command of resources, and the ability to partake in sophisticated, refined activities. Even walks along garden paths were an opportunity to observe the landscape, show off fashion, or engage in discreet conversation, demonstrating that leisure on the Gold Coast was as much a performance as a personal pleasure. The gardens and grounds also served as settings for intimate moments and private reflection. Hidden nooks, arbors, and gazebos provided secluded areas where families could escape the social demands of the mansion, enjoy reading or conversation, or simply observe nature. These private spaces contrasted with the public, performative areas of the estate, highlighting the duality of life on the Gold Coast, a world of both spectacle and sanctuary, where social performance coexisted with private contemplation. Waterfalls, benches, and winding paths encouraged a sense of exploration, allowing the estate's inhabitants to move through their surroundings with a sense of discovery and control, creating a living landscape that was both beautiful and functional. The integration of technology and convenience into the landscape was another hallmark of Gold Coast design. Irrigation systems, gas or electric lighting along pathways, and outdoor heating elements for winter gatherings ensured that the grounds were usable and impressive year-round. And staff quarters, hidden paths, and service roads allowed gardeners, groundskeepers, and other employees to maintain the estate without disrupting the aesthetic or social life of the family. This seamless blending of function and beauty ensured that the appearance of effortless luxury was maintained at all times, reinforcing the carefully curated image of the estate. Social rituals were inseparable from these grounds. The layout of gardens and outdoor spaces facilitated gatherings, promenades, and spectacles, each designed to impress and reinforce the status of the family. Guests were often guided along specific paths that revealed the estate's most impressive features, leading from the mansion to the gardens, fountains, and water features in a carefully orchestrated experience. Seasonal parties, regattas, and hunts provided opportunities for networking, matchmaking, and social maneuvering, ensuring that the family's presence and influence were felt both within the estate and across the broader social sphere. The leisure lifestyle on the Gold Coast also reflected broader cultural influences. European traditions of garden design, outdoor entertainment, and recreational sport were adapted and amplified to reflect the scale and resources of American wealth. The integration of European art, architecture, and horticultural techniques into the landscape reinforced the elite's connection to global culture, positioning them not just as wealthy Americans, but as members of a transatlantic cosmopolitan elite. At the same time, the scale and innovation of these estates reflected the unique opportunities of the American context, a land where industrial and financial success could translate into enormous personal expression through land, architecture, and leisure. Yet, as with the interiors, the beauty and leisure of the grounds relied on extensive labor. Teams of gardeners, groundskeepers, and laborers worked tirelessly to maintain lawns, flower beds, fountains, and trees. Seasonal plantings required careful planning and execution. Irrigation systems needed constant monitoring, and fountains and water features demanded regular maintenance. This labor was largely invisible to the families and their guests, yet it was essential to sustaining the illusion of effortless elegance. The juxtaposition of leisure and labor, beauty and toil, was a defining feature of life on the Gold Coast, reflecting the social hierarchies and economic realities of the era. The grounds also provided opportunities for education and cultural development. Botanical gardens, aviaries, and collections of exotic plants and trees introduced residents and visitors to global flora, forcing an image of cultivated knowledge and sophistication. Outdoor sculptures, fountains, and architectural follies provided a sense of history and art, turning the landscape into an open-air museum that could be enjoyed at leisure. Every element, from the placement of each rosebush to the design of each reflecting pool, communicated the family's taste, refinement, and command of resources. Walking through the grounds of a Gold Coast mansion today, visitors can still sense the careful orchestration that defined life on these estates. The interplay of architecture and landscape, of leisure and labor, of public display and private retreat, creates a narrative that is both visually stunning and socially instructive. These estates were designed to impress, to delight, and to communicate a story of power, taste, and cultural sophistication, a story that continues to captivate historians, architects, and visitors alike. Ultimately, the gardens, grounds, and leisure activities of the Gold Coast were an essential extension of the mansions themselves. They transformed land into art, labor into spectacle, and leisure into social currency. They were spaces where nature and culture intersected, where beauty was both aesthetic and functionally, where the rhythms of life, play, work, observation, and social performance were choreographed to perfection. The legacy of these grounds endures, not just in their physical beauty, but in the stories they tell about ambition, taste, and the complex interplay between wealth, power, and leisure in one of America's most extraordinary historical contexts. Life on Long Island's Gold Coast was a world of dazzling luxury and social spectacle, but beneath the surface of polished floors, glittering chandeliers, and manicured gardens, there existed an intricate web of labor and hierarchy that made such opulence possible. The grandeur and elegance that visitors admired were in large part the product of hundreds of invisible handsmen and women who worked tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring that every detail of the mansion, from its immaculate interiors to its sprawling grounds, operated smoothly. These workers were the lifeblood of the estate, their labor hidden from view, yet essential to sustaining the lifestyle of the elite families who called these mansions home. The organization of staff within a Gold Coast mansion resembled a small, highly structured society, complete with rank, roles, and responsibilities. At the top of this hierarchy stood the housekeeper, or steward, who was responsible for the overall management of the household staff. These individuals were often highly experienced, capable of orchestrating complex schedules, supervising dozens of workers, and ensuring that the mansion's operations ran flawlessly. Beneath them, specialized staff handled individual aspects of the household. Butlers attended to the personal needs of the family and guests. Valets managed wardrobes and personal care. Cooks and kitchen staff prepared elaborate meals. Maids maintained the cleanliness and appearance of every room, and groundskeepers ensured that the exterior spaces reflected the same level of perfection as the interiors. The scope of work required in these mansions was staggering. Interiors were vast and elaborate, with rooms dedicated to music, reading, dining, social gatherings, and entertainment, each demanding meticulous attention. Floors required constant polishing. Silver and china needed regular cleaning and polishing. Fireplaces had to be maintained, and linens laundered and pressed. Every object from delicate porcelain figurines to priceless artworks required careful handling, dusting, and positioning. Staff worked long hours, often beginning before dawn and continuing late into the evening, their schedules dictated by the needs of the household and the timing of social events in the kitchens. A level of precision and skill rivaling that of professional chefs was required. Meals were often elaborate, multi-course affairs prepared with fresh ingredients sourced from both local suppliers and distant regions. Reflecting the wealth and taste of the household, staff needed to coordinate the preparation of dozens of dishes simultaneously, ensuring that each course was presented at the perfect temperature and appearance. Banquets and parties required additional labor, with temporary teams brought in to manage large gatherings, oversee table settings, and serve guests with flawless attention. Culinary staff's efforts were largely invisible, their success measured by the seamless perfection of a meal, with no guest aware of the complexity behind its execution. But the staff's responsibilities went far beyond cleaning and cooking. They were tasked with maintaining the aesthetic, functional, and technological aspects of the mansion. Heating systems needed monitoring. Lighting had to be arranged appropriately. Windows cleaned and furniture repaired or adjusted. Large estates often included features that demanded specialized attention: elevators, intercom systems, elaborate electrical or plumbing networks, all requiring skilled oversight. The illusion of effortless living depended entirely on this unseen labor, performed with discipline, discretion, and dedication. Thus, the true story of the Gold Coast lies not only in its marble halls and gilded salons, but in the quiet corridors and service stairs where the machinery of opulence turned day after day, stained by hands that history rarely names, but without which none of it would have been possible. Required specialized attention, such as elevators, early intercom systems, or water features, each adding layers of complexity to household management. The staff's expertise and discretion ensured that these elements enhanced the family's lifestyle without drawing attention to the labor involved. Social etiquette and hierarchy played a crucial role in structuring staff life. Each member of the household knew their rank, the limits of their authority, and their responsibilities in relation to others. Mistakes could result not only in practical consequences, but in social embarrassment for the family, emphasizing the pressure placed on workers to perform flawlessly. Younger or less experienced staff were often mentored by senior members, learning the intricate codes of conduct and procedures that governed life behind the scenes. For many, service in a Gold Coast mansion was both a career and a form of social apprenticeship, teaching skills in hospitality, management, and etiquette that could be applied in other households or businesses. The personal relationships between staff and the families they served were complex, shaped by proximity, loyalty, and dependence. While a strict separation existed between the lives of the elite and those who served them, bonds often formed through shared routines, understanding of household rhythms, and long-term employment. But these relationships were defined by strict social conventions. Staff were expected to be invisible during leisure moments, yet instantly responsive when needed, always maintaining discretion and professionalism. Failures in this system could disrupt the image of perfection, making staff accountability both a personal and professional imperative. Childcare and education within these estates were often the responsibility of governesses, nannies, and tutors. Children of wealthy families were raised with strict routines, tutored in multiple languages, literature, music, and etiquette. Staff were tasked not only with supervision, but with molding the children's behavior, ensuring that they learned the social skills necessary to maintain family status. The demands of this role were high, as the future social position of the children could influence family alliances and marriages, placing additional pressure on staff to perform flawlessly. Laundry and clothing maintenance were also central to the household's smooth operation. Wardrobes were extensive, including multiple outfits for each day of the week, formal evening attire, and seasonal clothing. Valets, laundresses, and seamstresses ensured that each garment was cleaned, pressed, and maintained to perfection. Even small errors, wrinkles, stains, or misplaced accessories were considered unacceptable, as appearance was a critical marker of status, both inside and outside the home. In this way, staff labor directly influenced the social perception of the family and its standing in elite circles. Staff quarters, though modest compared to the mansion itself, were carefully organized to ensure efficiency and privacy. Separate hallways, staircases, and entrances allowed workers to move through the estate without interfering with family life or guests. Kitchens, pantries, and storage areas were often located near service entrances, allowing discreet delivery of meals and supplies. Bedrooms for staff were functional yet sufficient, with strict schedules dictating sleep, work, and leisure. Despite the labor-intensive lifestyle, many staff members took pride in their work, developing a sense of professionalism and mastery. In their respective roles, the relationship between labor and leisure was a defining feature of Gold Coast life. While the elite enjoyed the luxury of gardens, music, parties, and travel, these experiences The relationship between labor and leisure was a defining feature of Gold Coast life. While the elite enjoyed the luxury of gardens, music, parties, and travel, these experiences were made possible by the painstaking work of staff. Each garden party, croquet match, or musical recital relied on meticulous preparation: flowers arranged, lawns trimmed, tables set, and refreshments ready. Staff often worked long hours in silence, their efforts unseen yet essential to sustaining the illusion of effortless wealth. This dynamic created both tension and dependency, as the family relied on staff competence while maintaining clear social boundaries. The seasonal rhythms of estate life added further layers of complexity. Summer brought an increase in outdoor activities, requiring additional staff to manage gardens, pools, and recreational events. Autumn and winter introduced indoor gatherings, holidays, and formal events, each demanding precision and coordination. Seasonal changes also affected the maintenance of the mansion itself. Windows needed cleaning, heating systems adjusted, and decorative elements updated. The cyclical nature of the year dictated staff schedules, requiring careful planning and foresight to anticipate the demands of each season. In addition to routine labor, estates often hosted visiting dignitaries, celebrities, or political figures, requiring heightened attention to protocol and presentation. Staff were responsible for ensuring that the mansion's appearance, the timing of meals and events, and even the smallest details of hospitality reflected flawlessly on the family. A well-executed visit could enhance reputation and influence, while errors could lead to embarrassment or social setbacks. In this way, the labor of staff was not merely functional but deeply intertwined with the social and political ambitions of the household. Training and discipline were critical components of staff life. Many workers began as apprentices or junior employees, learning the nuances of etiquette, household management, and service under the guidance of more experienced staff. Mistakes were often corrected swiftly, and attention to detail was paramount. Staff were expected to anticipate needs before being asked, maintain composure under pressure, and navigate complex social situations with discretion. The ability to perform flawlessly, invisibly, and consistently was the hallmark of excellence in Gold Coast service. Despite the invisible nature of their work, staff life was rich in its own way, with traditions, hierarchies, and camaraderie among workers. Long-term employees often developed strong bonds, creating a sense of community and shared purpose. Knowledge of the mansion's routines, hidden spaces, and operational secrets gave staff a form of expertise and authority within their domain, even if it was largely unrecognized by the families they served. Many staff members remained with a single estate for decades, contributing to continuity and stability within a household that otherwise revolved around social display and transient guests. The complexity of Gold Coast estates also meant that specialized roles emerged. Chauffeurs, gardeners, chefs, housekeepers, governesses, and footmen each had distinct responsibilities, yet their work was interconnected, forming a network of labor that required coordination and mutual dependence. For instance, a garden party required gardeners to prepare the grounds, housekeepers to manage table settings and refreshments, chefs to produce meals, and footmen to serve guests, all functioning seamlessly to create the illusion of effortless leisure. Any disruption in this network could have immediate consequences, underscoring the precision and coordination required to sustain life behind the scenes. Staff often bore witness to the private lives of the elite, observing family dynamics, social rituals, and the interplay of ambition and desire. Their proximity to wealth and power gave them a unique perspective on human behavior. Yet social norms dictated strict discretion. Gossip, personal knowledge, and intimate observation were never to leave the confines of service, creating an environment where staff learned to navigate complex social cues while remaining invisible participants in the household drama. This dual existence, present yet unseen, was a defining characteristic of Gold Coast labor, highlighting both the power and the limitations of those who maintained these grand estates. Even as technology advanced, labor remained central. Electricity, plumbing, heating systems, and early communication devices like intercoms enhanced comfort but required oversight. Staff were trained to operate, maintain, and troubleshoot these innovations, ensuring that modern conveniences did not compromise the aesthetic or function of the mansion. Their expertise bridged tradition and modernity, blending skilled labor with technical knowledge to sustain the luxurious lifestyle that defined the Gold Coast. Ultimately, the story of life behind the scenes at Long Island's Gold Coast mansions is one of unseen labor, structured hierarchy, and meticulous coordination. It reveals that the glittering lifestyle of the elite was dependent on human effort, expertise, and discretion. These estates were not simply homes. They were complex systems requiring the dedication, skill, and loyalty of countless individuals working quietly in the background. The elegance and perfection admired by guests were the results of decades of refined procedures, careful management, and relentless attention to detail in this hidden world. The true artistry was not only in architecture or decoration, but in the orchestration of human effort, creating a seamless experience that allowed wealth, taste, and social ambition to flourish unimpeded. Life on Long Island's Gold Coast was not only about the grand architecture, exquisite interiors, and meticulously curated gardens. It was equally about the intricate social fabric that defined the era. The mansions themselves were symbols of wealth, power, and taste, but they came alive through the people who inhabited them and the society that revolved around them. Families of the Gold Coast understood that social perception was as important as personal comfort. Every action, every event, every display of luxury was part of a carefully constructed narrative aimed at maintaining status, impressing peers, and asserting dominance within the upper echelons of society. Extravagance was not merely indulgence, it was a medium through which wealth and influence were communicated, observed, and measured. The seasonal rhythms of society on the Gold Coast dictated the pace of life for its inhabitants. Spring marked the beginning of social re-entry after the long winter, with formal calls, garden visits, and the preparation of estates for the summer season. Summer was the height of social display, with lavish garden parties, outdoor dances, boating excursions, and tennis tournaments. Families would entertain influential guests, including business partners, politicians, and members of high society, creating opportunities for networking. Alliances and courtship. Autumn brought hunting parties, regattas, and formal dinners, while winter offered indoor balls, charity galas, and elaborate holiday celebrations. Each season demanded a mastery of etiquette, planning, and spectacle. As social missteps could damage reputation and influence, the concept of hosting was central to Gold Coast life. Families competed to throw the most memorable parties with elaborate themes, extensive guest lists, and painstaking attention to detail. Invitations themselves were carefully designed and timed, reflecting both taste and social strategy. Guests were expected to arrive punctually, adhere to dress codes, and participate in the social choreography of the event. Failure to follow these unwritten rules could result in embarrassment or exclusion from future gatherings. In this way, social life functioned as a form of performance where every participant, including staff and guests, played a role in reinforcing the family's prestige. Ballrooms were the epicenters of this social performance. These enormous spaces were designed to host hundreds of guests, with polished floors for dancing, chandeliers providing dazzling light, and walls adorned with mirrors, tapestries, or artwork. Orchestras or chamber ensembles provided live music, their melodies shaping the rhythm of the evening. Dance cards, a fixture of formal events, ensured that social interactions were organized and strategically managed, allowing families to cultivate alliances, observe potential marriage prospects, and display their refinement. Balls were not only entertainment. They were instruments of social positioning, with careful planning reflecting the host's wealth, taste, and social intelligence. Fashion played an equally important role in the language of extravagance. Women's gowns were elaborate, often custom-made, reflecting the latest European trends while showcasing expensive fabrics, lace, and embroidery. Accessories including jewelry, gloves, and hats were carefully selected to complement each ensemble, signaling both wealth and cultural awareness. Men's attire was equally precise, with tailored suits, morning coats, and formal evening wear marking status and taste. Clothing was not merely personal expression, but a tool for social signaling, reinforcing the hierarchy of the elite and demonstrating an acute awareness of propriety and style. Dining was another arena in which extravagance was displayed. Meals were multi-course affairs, often lasting several hours and featuring the finest ingredients, some imported from Europe or exotic regions. Silver, china, and crystal were carefully arranged, while flower arrangements, candelabras, and decorative elements enhanced the table's aesthetic. Formal dining required precise etiquette, with each course served in sequence, accompanied by wines, and silver, china, and crystal were carefully arranged, while flower arrangements, candelabras, and decorative elements enhanced the table's aesthetic. Formal dining required precise etiquette, with each course served in sequence, accompanied by wines and beverages selected to complement the meal. Guests were expected to follow strict codes of conduct, from posture to conversation, reflecting the importance of composure, manners, and cultural literacy. In this setting, food became both sustenance and spectacle, a medium through which wealth, taste, and sophistication were communicated. Extravagance extended beyond the home and into leisure activities. Families participated in yachting, polo, hunting, and tennis, demonstrating skill, athleticism, and refinement. Private clubs and regattas offered opportunities to display horsemanship, sailing ability, or competitive prowess, while reinforcing social bonds and hierarchies. Even seemingly casual activities, such as boating on a private lake or hosting a croquet match on manicured lawns, were carefully curated performances designed to impress and maintain status. Leisure, therefore, was inseparable from display, and each activity served to reinforce the family's prominence within elite circles. Travel was another arena in which social and cultural capital was expressed. Many families of the Gold Coast spent winters in European capitals or at fashionable resorts, returning with the latest fashions. Artworks and ideas were then displayed in the mansion or at social gatherings. These experiences were woven into the social fabric of the estate, influencing party themes, decor, and conversation. The cosmopolitan knowledge gained through travel signaled both sophistication and the financial means to participate in global culture, further distinguishing Gold Coast families from less affluent peers. Education and cultural refinement were also markers of social status. Children were tutored in languages, literature, music, and etiquette, ensuring that they could navigate elite society with skill and poise. Governesses, tutors, and private instructors played critical roles in shaping both intellect and demeanor. Families often emphasized exposure to art, theater, and literature as part of upbringing. Cultivation of taste and knowledge was considered a reflection of the family's values and a necessary component of sustaining social influence. The extravagance of Gold Coast society was intertwined with philanthropy and public visibility. Charity balls, cultural donations, and support for the arts allowed families to display generosity and social conscience while maintaining their public image. Participation in these endeavors was strategic, reinforcing connections, enhancing reputation, and positioning families as leaders within both social and civic spheres. Philanthropy became another language of status, allowing wealth to be displayed not only privately but in the public. Emerging social influence with cultural contribution. The staff played an essential role in facilitating this society of extravagance. From preparing meals to arranging floral decorations, managing guest lists, and coordinating events, the household labor force worked tirelessly to ensure that each social interaction reflected the family's wealth, taste, and sophistication. The seamless performance of staff allowed the elite to focus on socializing, entertaining, and maintaining their positions within society, illustrating the interdependence of labor and luxury that defined the Gold Coast lifestyle. Scandals and gossip, though often discreet, were a constant undercurrent within Gold Coast society. Rumors about marriages, affairs, financial decisions, and personal rivalries circulated quietly, influencing alliances and perceptions. Families invested in managing appearances meticulously, aware that reputation was fragile and could be affected by both insiders and outsiders. The stakes of social life were heightened. Every display of extravagance carried not only pleasure, but the implicit pressure to maintain influence and avoid missteps. The architecture and interior design of the mansions themselves were integrated into the performance of social life. Ballrooms, salons, and dining rooms were strategically placed to facilitate interaction, observation, and display. Corridors, staircases, and terraces guided guests through a carefully orchestrated journey, revealing the family's wealth and taste in deliberate stages. The placement of artworks, sculptures, and decorative objects was intentional, providing conversation points and highlighting cultural literacy. Even furniture placement and room lighting were considered part of the performance, creating spaces that were visually stunning while functionally supporting social interaction. Extravagance also extended to the acquisition of art, antiques, and collectible objects. European paintings, tapestries, sculptures, and furniture filled the homes, reflecting a deep appreciation for history and aesthetics. While signaling financial power, collections were displayed strategically, often curated to impress guests and reinforce cultural sophistication. Some families commissioned original works from prominent artists, further demonstrating taste, discernment, and the ability to influence culture directly. The accumulation and display of such objects became a central aspect of social positioning. The family's narrative of refinement and authority, transportation and mobility, were additional arenas for extravagant display. Private carriages, automobiles, and even yachts were symbols of freedom, power, and sophistication. Arrivals at parties, outings, or social events were carefully staged, with the mode of travel itself conveying status. Chauffeurs, footmen, and attendants ensured that these movements were smooth, coordinated, and visually impressive, transforming simple travel into a theatrical component of social life. Even outdoor leisure contributed to the culture of extravagance. Tennis matches, croquet games, and boating excursions were staged events with attire, timing, and guest selection carefully orchestrated to impress. The meticulous maintenance of lawns, gardens, and recreational facilities ensured that every visual impression reinforced the narrative of wealth and refinement. These activities, though ostensibly leisurely, were deeply social, offering opportunities for observation, alliance building, and subtle competition. Fashion, decor, leisure, philanthropy, and travel all intersected to create a society where extravagance was both expected and necessary. Each display of wealth communicated messages about taste, influence, and ambition. Families on the Gold Coast understood that social positioning was fragile, maintained not only through financial resources, but through careful performance, cultivation of appearances, and strategic engagement with both private and public spheres. In essence, life on Long Island's Gold Coast was a continuous performance, carefully choreographed display of wealth, taste, and social intelligence. The mansions, gardens, and interiors were stages upon which this drama unfolded. But the true spectacle was the society itself, web of connections, rituals, and hierarchies maintained through meticulous attention to detail, unwavering commitment to appearances, and the relentless pursuit of status. Every event, every meal, every social gesture carried meaning, reinforcing the elite's dominance, shaping perception, and ensuring that the legacy of the Gold Coast would endure as a symbol of ambition, refinement, and extravagance. The Long Island Gold Coast mansions, once symbols of unbridled wealth, social ambition, and cultural refinement, have left behind a legacy that continues to captivate historians, architects, and the public alike. These estates, sprawling across the north shore of Long Island, were not just residencies, but monumental expressions of aspiration, taste, and social hierarchy. Yet, as the 20th century unfolded, the era of the Gold Coast reached its apex and began a gradual decline shaped by economic pressures, social change, and historical events that reshaped the American landscape. The story of these mansions is therefore not merely one of architectural grandeur or social spectacle, but also of impermanence, transformation, and the enduring fascination they hold in the cultural imagination. At the height of their glory, the Gold Coast mansions embodied an almost theatrical level of luxury. Families spared no expense in constructing homes that rivaled European palaces, employing architects, interior designers, and landscape planners who brought visions of old-world sophistication to the New World. Yet this grandeur came at an enormous cost, both financial and operational. The upkeep of these estates required hundreds of staff, extensive groundskeeping, continuous maintenance of plumbing, heating, and lighting systems, and constant attention to the minutiae of aesthetics. Long as the fortunes of these families remained robust, the estates flourished as centers of culture, leisure, and social influence. But the fragility of this wealth meant that the decline could be swift when external pressures or economic downturns intervened. The Great Depression of the 1930s proved particularly catastrophic for many Gold Coast families. The stock market crash and the subsequent economic collapse decimated fortunes that had been built on banking, industry, and real estate. Families who had once commissioned Oheka Castle, Sands Point, or Hempstead House with the confidence of limitless resources suddenly found themselves facing untenable expenses. The operational costs of these massive estate salaries for staff, maintenance of extensive grounds, heating large mansions during harsh winters became insurmountable burdens. Many families were forced to sell their properties at a fraction of their original value, while others were compelled to abandon them entire. Many families were forced to sell their properties, sometimes at a fraction of their original value, while others were compelled to abandon them entirely. Estates that had been carefully curated for generations began to deteriorate. Gardens overgrown, roofs leaking, and interiors falling into disrepair. World War II accelerated this decline. As the nation mobilized for war, labor shortages affected the ability to maintain large households. Many staff members enlisted, leaving estates understaffed and unable to function as they had in their heyday. Meanwhile, the wartime economy redirected resources away from luxury and toward production and defense. Some mansions were requisitioned for military use, serving as training centers, hospitals, or officer quarters. While this practical use kept the properties occupied, it often resulted in physical and structural damage. Furniture was removed, decorative elements destroyed, and gardens neglected, leaving a legacy of wear and loss that would linger for decades. In the post-war era, changing social norms and the democratization of wealth further eroded the Gold Coast lifestyle. The rigid social hierarchies that had defined these estates became less relevant in a society increasingly valuing merit, education, and mobility over inherited status. Many of the younger generations of Gold Coast families chose not to maintain the estates, opting instead for modern homes in suburban developments or urban centers. The economic burden of maintaining these properties remained prohibitive, and, as a result, many mansions were sold, repurposed, or abandoned. Some were converted into schools, hospitals, museums, or event spaces, while others fell into disrepair, their once grand halls and gardens fading into memory. Yet even in decline, the Gold Coast mansions retained a mystique and fascination that has only grown over time. Their architecture, craftsmanship, and design represent a pinnacle of American residential construction, blending European influence with American ambition. Architects such as Delano and Aldrich, Carrere and Hastings, and John Russell Pope left an indelible mark on the region, producing homes that were not merely functional but works of art. From soaring ceilings to intricate woodwork, marble fireplaces, and lavish ballrooms, these estates remain touchstones for those studying design, aesthetics, and the history of wealth in America. The gardens and grounds, though sometimes overgrown or repurposed, continue to demonstrate the sophistication of landscape planning, offering lessons in form, symmetry, and the integration of natural and artificial elements. The cultural significance of the Gold Coast mansions extends beyond architecture. They embody a particular vision of American life in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, one that emphasized conspicuous consumption, social performance, and the projection of power through material display. They were sites of innovation in technology, with early electrical systems, elevators, plumbing, and heating introduced to ensure comfort and efficiency. They were centers of art and culture, housing priceless collections of paintings, sculptures, and furniture, hosting musical recitals, lectures, and literary gatherings. They were also social laboratories, revealing the dynamics of class, labor, and gender within elite society. Understanding these estates allows historians and cultural scholars to trace the interplay between wealth, identity, and social norms in a rapidly changing America. Preservation efforts in the later 20th and early 21st centuries have sought to rescue and restore many of these historic estates. Foundations, preservation societies, and private investors have undertaken painstaking work to repair structural damage, restore interiors, and revive gardens. Oheka Castle, for example, has been transformed into a luxury hotel and event venue, allowing the public to experience the grandeur of the Gold Coast firsthand. Hempstead House and Sands Point Preserve offer tours, educational programs, and cultural events, bringing history to life and ensuring that future generations can appreciate the scale and artistry of these homes. These preservation efforts underscore the enduring fascination with the Gold Coast, demonstrating that even as the original social context has faded, the architectural and cultural achievements remain profoundly relevant. The legacy of the Gold Coast mansions also manifests in popular culture. Writers such as F. Scott Fitzgerald drew inspiration from these estates, weaving tales of wealth, aspiration, and social ambition into works like The Great Gatsby. Films, documentaries, and photography projects continue to capture the allure of these properties, highlighting their beauty, craftsmanship, and the lifestyle they represent. In this way, the Gold Coast has become a symbol not only of historical wealth, but of broader American themes: ambition, access, aspiration, and the intersection of beauty and power. The estates serve as both a window into the past and a mirror, reflecting contemporary fascination with luxury, status, and social performance. The decline of many mansions also serves as a cautionary tale about the impermanence of wealth and the fragility of social hierarchies. The very factors that enabled their creation, consolidated fortunes, industrial success, and social ambition, also contained the seeds of vulnerability. economic downturns, societal change, and the passage of time transformed these symbols of permanence into relics, highlighting the ephemeral nature of even the most opulent human achievements. This duality, the simultaneous grandeur and transience of the Gold Coast, contributes to its ongoing allure, offering lessons in both aspiration and humility for scholars, architects, and cultural enthusiasts. The Gold Coast provides a rich repository of knowledge, study of construction techniques, materials, and design innovations, offers insights into the technological capabilities and aesthetic priorities of the era. Examination of household routines, staff hierarchies, and social events reveals the complex interactions between labor, leisure, and power. Analysis of family histories, finances, and societal influence illuminates broader patterns in American society, including the rise and decline of elite families, the shifting roles of women, and the integration of European cultural norms into American life. The estates are, in essence, living textbooks, offering lessons across disciplines from architecture and horticulture to sociology and history. Even today, the Gold Coast mansions inspire awe.